Thank you, Mr. Wickremesinghe. It was a very interesting presentation, and like all good presentations, it made me think in many directions. So if the chair will allow me, I'll just ask 3 questions. One, I think it was a very interesting idea that you said that, in Indian Ocean, there is 2 parts, and they have very different political and economic systems of their own, which are kind of independent in some ways from each other. Even in late 40s, when they were first talking about creating an Asian organization, this was a debate of whether to have one Asian organization or have these 2. That tension existed. But still, the Indian Ocean, even today, has such currency, continues as an idea, as a strategic and political concept. Why do you think that is? What is given the fact that there is clearly a clear divide on cultural, on economic, on political level on these 2 parts of the world, why do you think that Indian Ocean still persists as an idea? And now some people are actually trying to expand it to Indo-Pacific, even a bigger idea. The second question is about these strategic states that you talk about, the 5 strategic states, and the India-China competition that exists to a certain degree here. Do you think in the years you have seen that intensify, or has it has it been steadily intensifying, or is it something that has changed over years, and how does it change? And what triggers it? How much of it, in your experience, gets triggered by decisions that strategic states themselves make, say Hambantota Port or something like that? Or how much of it gets triggered by the tensions that are rising between India and China on their border, and then that's spilling out to other strategic states? How much of that kind of dynamics plays out in it? And the third question I have, it's an apocryphal story, because we are talking about regions here, but there's an apocryphal story that has been doing rounds for many years, that Sri Lanka many times considered being part of ASEAN, or thought of it as a Southeast Asian country. What are your thoughts on that? Is there some truth in that, of conceiving yourself in a different way, in a different part of a different region? Yeah, thank you.
Why do we think of the Indian Ocean? I think it begins, if you go back to history, of course, we've had relations, and countries like the Portuguese Empire spread from Mozambique all the way up into Macau. Same with the Dutch, but even earlier. Finally, we were all a part of the British Empire, and it was Mahatma Gandhi, who started it off in Africa and then came to India. There have been people of Indian origin of the old British Empire who have been in Africa, who's been here. So that sort of sparked it off. And also a large number of African soldiers fought on the Burmese front with the Indian soldiers. So they came back. We presume that obviously what the Indian soldiers came into Africa and accelerated the process. Those are the pros. And the non-aligned movement. When we had met as Colombo Powers and Bandung, it was to get Afro-Asian. And that Afro was more the Indian Ocean. It's later on Mr. Nehru went to make the non-aligned movement. It's spread out there. But that relations has been there, and to a large extent. I mean, you take India, your connections to Mauritius, your connections to Kenya, your connections to Zanzibar. It's within it, how do we build up with Commonwealth? Other one that brought us together was the British Commonwealth. So we had this. It's how do you gel these together? That has been the issue, and you couldn't gel it together because of other problems, mainly on the continent. One was the Sino-Indian clash. Earlier, we were together, a Sino-Indian clash. So that sort of occupied. Then secondly, the presence of America and the clash with Russia. So that became one of the major issues. How much do the strategic states know? Sometimes we also contribute to it. I would say Hambantota Harbour is not an issue to be worried with, but there have been issues. For instance, the whole one issue was the people of Indian origin in Sri Lanka. When we decided on the citizenship issue, even the Tamils voted for the bill. But I think this is the only way in which India and Sri Lanka was able to sort it out, unlike other countries. And it's worked out. We still had a residue of people who didn't want to go to India despite having taken the Indian citizenship. When I was PM, I said we'll finish it off, give them, either got to do two things. Forcibly got to put them into a ship and send them. If India doesn't take them, they have to float around. Otherwise, we have to give citizenship. So I said we'll give citizenship and finish it off. So that's one of the issues that were there. You had the same thing in Myanmar and in Africa. Second issue with us had been during Mrs. Gandhi's time, the whole issue of LTT, what happened there, but it turned the other way when the IPKF came and finally Rajiv Gandhi took a strong stand against it. We know the consequences from there, and from then onwards, India has been very helpful in finishing off the war in 2009. But it spills over. Now look at presently the Bangladesh. The Bangladesh, Mrs. Sheikh Hasina had to go off. I mean, we are thankful to her for helping us during the crisis, nevertheless. And you've seen now the other forces and the problems with India, but we feel that given a year or two, this should sort itself out. Very little that anyone can do except for this type of uprisings. They sort of, I don't know if you have heard the word papadang in India. That's when you fry it, it goes up, and after some time the whole thing comes down again. So that is what political events are in our part of the world. Of course, recently we had the Indo-Pakistan crisis also, so those can ferment issues, but sometimes what happens, Nepal regularly has these issues, but those are minor ones which can be sorted out. It's finally where India and China would come to, but with BRICS and all, there has to be some form of agreement or accommodation, because it's not a front. That's been the one. What is Sri Lanka? Well, are we a part of Southeast Asia? Is Southeast Asia part of us? Because the Buddhism of Southeast Asia's foundation is here. Then another thing is Ramayana, it's Hinduism. You look at the Hinduism in Bali, it's not the Hinduism we know, or you have in India or Sri Lanka. But there are so much of cultural connections. As I said, there was a Thai prince who came and took over the northern part of Sri Lanka sometimes. So it is with certainly with Sri Vijaya. Sri Lanka and Sri Vijaya were allies against the Cholas. So those things have gone in. Then we were part of the Dutch Empire, so we went to Batavia. So these are there to a large extent between us, part of India, and it's how do we bring all this together? That's our concern. We have to do that, and what I feel is that Indonesia is the key country that has to decide what happens. If one of the issues which we have is that if the Indonesian capital is taken away into Kalimantan, what is the impact? Indonesia has always been, either Sumatra or Java were the kingdoms, then Dutch came and they had Batavia, which have become Jakarta. So that's played a lead role here in the power balance. So if you go into the middle of and go in there, what impact do you have? Will you lose that? Will Sumatra and Java build up its own identity, creating another crisis? So those are, I don't know how much, we all don't know how much that is, but it can even create a crisis for Indonesia, and it can dilute Indonesia's clout in this part of the world. But certainly, and I think there is a lot of connection, but it's how you come up here and how you get involved. I can understand at the moment things are the way things are in our part of the world, that to meet us as a group may be difficult, but Singapore and India are working, and we see a fair amount of investments coming into the southern states, which is natural. Same with Malaysia. So there is something on it. How do you formalize this and get along? We may not have big agreements like NATO or EU, but somehow or other we've been managed to get along without too much of problems.
Pushpa. Thank you. Thank you for the talk, Mr. Wickremesinghe. Actually, I'm quite interested when you said that we consider these 5 states as strategic states and not ignored states. Why is it that we consider these states as strategic states? And is it only the perception on your part, or is it the perception on the part of the other bigger states as well? And has it or does it have any impact on the kind of relationship that these 5 states have with the larger ones? And perhaps it's a link to the same question when you said that I think you are also working something with Nepal. I'm interested to know a little bit more, if you could elaborate a little bit on more on that, if it's possible. What kind of a work that you are doing with Nepal together? Thank you.
No, we are strategic. Basically, we've all been part of one unit, which was under the British in different forms. Nepal was a protectorate, we were part of the colonies, India was a part of the empire. And without us, it's difficult for India. India can't be fighting us, we can't be fighting India. The strategic states. So actually what I think from time of Prime Minister Vajpayee has been a lot of us getting issues sorted out. Then India's role as the net security provider was also accepted, defining what exactly it is. But we do better. Neither can China go on fighting us. They also can't fight us. So we are strategic states, and we recognize India's major role there. But we recognize that US has a big role, and China also, and Japan. For Sri Lanka, Japan is very, very important. We won't go without Japan. So these are the key players that we see. For India, you also have to go along with France because some of the islands are there. But I have always said that Sri Lanka must also have island mentality, not only a South Asian mentality. So this is the way that we have been working. No, what we realize discussing, I mean, there are a lot of informal discussion that we have with even in Nepalese, Bangladeshis, Maldives. Then we realize that look what are the strategic positions. That's how this whole concept of strategic states came on. And later on, some of us had discussions. I went in Nepal. I think you went up to Nepal. They were here with Mr. Binod Chaudhary, who took it up from there. That it's the best is that we have a Sri Lanka chapter and a Nepal chapter to work together. Later on, we might have one in Oman. But then we get a full picture. Otherwise, we are only seeing one part of the Indian subcontinent. And of course, we see the whole Indian Ocean. But with Nepal, you see what's happening out there in the Himalayas. So we thought by getting together, and it's not only that we've been talking now with India Foundation on that side. We'd like very much to work with you. I think all of us should get together and pool our views as to what is possible. And so far as Sri Lanka is, with this geopolitical category is concerned, we want to do this, and then we are trying to move somewhere into the West Asia to have one there. But this is really growing, and as I told my friend in the morning, now President Trump has become a patron saint. He's changing the world order. So we have far more work to do. But we should, because in my view, Indian Ocean and this region is going to be the important one. And the growth will come there. Even China must come into this area. They can't do. So how do you hold it? It's a question for many of us. How do we hold the competing interests without without the tensions aggravating to a point where security is at risk? Within it, the play it has to take. So that's where we all have to get together, look at the different. I mean, you have a viewpoint which goes into the Pacific Ocean. For us, the Pacific Ocean ended somewhere near Canton. That's where trading ended. It didn't go beyond that. Matiola here. And actually the Southeast Asia was a term that was first used in Sri Lanka for the Southeast Asia Command. And then later on, we were invited in 68 to join, but Sri Lanka turned it down. And now ASEAN becomes so integrated that it's not possible for any of us to come into it. But individually to have trade agreements, even with RCEP, it's essential. So whether we, how do we enter the RCEP? India most probably will have its own agreement. It didn't join RCEP, but it will have its agreement. We have asked, we had applied earlier for to come to an agreement with RCEP. But what we see now and what you have to take note of is the BRICS, whatever it is going to be important. And remember, sanctions against Russia failed because the Indian Ocean countries didn't cooperate. If you look at the amount of petrol that's been refined in the Middle East, refineries, that's more than what is pumped out from the Gulf countries. Certainly about that. Look at the number of ships that are taking this Russian oil around. It's all operating from here. Russia in I think Indian rupee are convertible. You go to Dubai, they are from London, they've come there. So it's becoming the key area to look at it. We are in a way influencing world events more and more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving such a good perspective of the whole place, historically as well as geographically. I'm originally from Bangladesh, now Singaporean, but originally from Bangladesh. So when you were speaking about Bangladesh, I got a little intrigued about the thoughts that you have. Bangladesh, as you have said, is going through a tumultuous time. I hope also it settles, as you mentioned. But we continue to have some, Bangladesh continues to have some problems with the Arakan and now the Chin, and as well as the northeastern states of India, which has not been mentioned over here, though Bangladesh has been with 170 million people, has been with the 5 states, but then northeastern states of India, which on the one side is China and the other side is Bangladesh, along with the Myanmar breaking up or going through another difficult time. I would like to have your perspective on that. As well as we hear that St. Martin's Island in Bangladesh, United States is interested. I do not know whether it is a matter of thought of some people, imaginary thoughts. Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know, but I can't see, frankly, I can't see US at this stage coming into anywhere close there. They are only looking at the whole, the major route only. No, Bangladesh is very important. I didn't deal with in length. It's not only the north here. For you have to have your good relations, and India you have to have because the chicken swing. I mean, basically that's the most crucial area I would see. The issues on with the northeastern states is something that has to be sorted out. In a way, all this came out of the partitioning of Bengal. So these are carryovers from the British time, which has come in. Maybe in a better atmosphere, you should be able to do it. I look at these as things that will take a fairly long time. We are lucky because with Kachati we sorted it out. But you all are going to, it has to be done. But it has not led to a major clash. It's only a political issue, which I feel you could go ahead. But if you push too much, those states might want to have a separate identity together with parts of Bangladesh. So it's far better to, I think, sort this out. But Indian Union is now in place. Far as Myanmar is concerned, the breakup is more due to the internal problems. And at some stage, there has to be a change of government. And where do you go from that? Another issue is who heads the change of government. You all know much better. You all are more involved in it than us. Our one mainly comes through the fact that the Buddhist clergy there and the Sri Lanka clergy are very, very close. I mean, basically, so we that's the influence we have is over with the clergy. It's a very, very big one. So we are also following it. But I think for my view for Indo-Bangladesh relations is you've got to wait for the present situation to settle down.
There are about 2 billion people in the South Asia, approximately 2 billion people.
I know.
How do you see them growing, I mean, economically getting emancipated and not continue to remain poor?
One is we have to decide on our own economic framework. If you look next door like Singapore and Malaysia, you see what's happened, and Thailand. In different ways they've opened it up. Thailand and all very much on agriculture onto here. It is, we still have to get out of the original thinking that were there in the 50s and 60s. That is, we still have too many lobbies that are trying to protect themselves and bring this down. If you open out, I don't think there's a major issue of going ahead. India has done it, India is doing it. Started off both on the southern side with Maharashtra and also with Gujarat. But to what extent? I think my idea has always been that we should agree and open up, but I always find that I'm in a minority in the whole region, and sometimes in my own country. But that's a big decision for us to take. Actually, India in the from the beginning of this century, in these 2 decades, have done quite well, looking at it, what it was earlier. And it's going ahead. There are 3 trillion odd economy. It's Price Waterhouse Cooper says it will be 30 trillion, but even if it's 20 trillion, which is very, very possible, it's a big development to 30 trillion. So India will go ahead, but how we all get onto it, we have to combine with India for our economic development. If you do that, then the rest of the other part of south of the Bay of Bengal, the eastern part will come together. The real issue also that comes with the China-Myanmar corridor is the role of Myanmar. They are both a member of ASEAN and a member of the BIMSTEC, because one of the access the Chinese have will come through Myanmar. Other is through Pakistan, so into that.
But on the Pakistan side, it might become Balochistan. It's also that difficulty going on.
I know, but I don't think at the end of the day Pakistan has known its own art of existence. Chinese are also dealing with Balochistan, no, from what I have heard. But it's really, we have to look at the Bay of Bengal and how that comes. That can be a very powerful economic unit.
So the history is also now working against us, because it's one of the oldest civilizations, and you have, as you rightly pointed out, both Buddhism, Hinduism, and later on Islam. So you have multi-ethnic, multi-cultural, multi-religious people in these 2 billion people, and how to combine them together to be able to work.
The problem is Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam was all covered by socialism. We have to get out of that. That is our problem. Otherwise, the Buddhist, Hindus, and the Islam merchants who built it up. We were an open economy. We were the biggest traders. The traders wouldn't go across from India. Buddhism removed the prohibition on sea transport. When the traders became Buddhists, they came along. Then the Hindus went along. And you had a very open one. Then we went, thanks to Mr. Nehru, and turned it the other way around. Ivan?
Thank you, sir, for coming to the Institute and for a wonderful presentation. You mentioned IORA and the difficulty of kind of creating cooperation in the Indian Ocean region. And I think that to some extent it's a question also of where you draw the boundaries of the region, because we discussed a lot about Bay of Bengal, India, Sri Lanka, and so on. But I mean, where are the borders of the region? Because in many ways, one can say that one of the reasons why IORA doesn't work so well is that there are too many members and it's very, very difficult to cooperate between them. So in a certain sense, my question is, if you have to promote some type of institutional cooperation, how can you effectively decide who's in, who's out? Because otherwise it will become very kind of geopolitically manipulated, and it will be very difficult to produce any effective maritime governance or cooperation. Thank you.
I mean, all of us recognize Indian Ocean begins in South Africa and comes all the way down to Perth. Historically, we've been trading, I would say, from where Mozambique is until Indonesia. That's recognized. It doesn't prevent them. Africa has a strong African Union. I don't know. My own issue of IORA's biggest weakness was it had no heads of government meeting. We only met at ministerial level. So we had only one heads of government meeting in 2017. So let IORA meet at the ministers level. This is why we were suggesting, we discussed that the central secretariat should basically beef up a heads of government meeting. And how it will take some time, but then how many members are there in the European Union? So we are just a few more than that. African Union has, but we have to have a better machinery if you have to go ahead. At one time, the heads of government used to meet. Even now, you go to the Commonwealth heads of government, most of them are there. Britain has now lost its interest, so I don't know what the future will be. But remember that's with the East Africans we meet regularly in our case. Partly also because we play cricket, addition to tea. So there are a lot of cultural links. There's nobody to gel it together. That's where if you look at RCEP, the heads of government means. So we haven't got that mechanism working. If we had that mechanism working, we wouldn't have all these issues. And that's what we have to move towards.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. I'm Avnish, the representative of the Confederation of Indian Industry. Thank you for your engagements with CII all over the years. But I ask this question more as a geopolitical observer. We have had in the past couple of weeks, the Indian Navy has publicly stated that they are very much capable of going against Pakistan in their briefing of Operation Sindoor. Yesterday, our defense minister on a CII platform also said that POJK and the people in POJK want to come back to India. But in all of this, I wanted to ask, what is your opinion of and the role that the Indian Navy could play in the region? Because the Navy's view, and of course in India, in the strategic committee's view, is that India is the security guarantor in the region. 30% of India's trade flows through the Malacca Strait, so Indian Navy can come in anytime, whenever there's an issue over there as well. How do you see the role of the Indian Navy playing out in the next 10-15 years?
No, Indian Navy is the largest navy in the Indian Ocean, and that's a recognized fact. It'll be there. What exactly is the net security provider? For instance, in regard to certainly maritime disasters, others, natural disasters, yes, and to a certain extent to getting together and working together on patrolling the high seas. But Indian Ocean is too big for a single navy to dominate. But within it, India has the largest navy, has to get that recognition. But what you're seeing now is also a build-up that is taking place of other navies. UAE is building up its navy. The other issue that you have is that Pakistan is also building up something like 8 submarines and 4 frigates. So those are issues that have to be, that type of arms race must stop in the area. Otherwise, it's difficult. But you have to look after Bay of Bengal. You have to look after the Arabian Sea, and then come down into the main sea routes. Another one that can develop later. That's going to be where it is. If China goes ahead with the Dar es Salaam to Angola rail track, then a lot of it will come from Bay of Bengal into that area, opening up a area which is not in any way petrol at the moment. There's nothing to work out there. South Africa can look at the Mozambique Channel, but that will also open up another area. So that's why I say it's much better, because you, again, how much of resources can you put into building up the armed forces, any of our countries? That's one of the issues. And you have a lot more to build up on your Air Force, so that's a lot of, that's the row between the Navy and the Air Force, who gets the money. But certainly, at the end of the day, there has to be some agreement. But I don't think the Chinese will come in a big way. This is a you, and if they are, that's why I said earlier, I see the Chinese strategy is more of getting together with all the countries, the littoral countries. Other than having a conflict over Taiwan, there's nothing else for them to. So it's really coming into some agreement where finally there will be some organized, maybe Aura itself, where India's role is recognized. How much of a role Australia will play in the Indian Ocean, I don't know, though they are getting this submarine, it to be more for the Pacific. The Americans have asked. But we will finally have to sort things out ourselves. What has happened so far, which is a very important one, is when the piracy took place in the Red Sea, our navies couldn't handle it. So you had to go to the UN and get the Europeans and these, even Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, all came in on this. So this is another area. And what is concerning Sri Lanka is the drugs trade, the amount of drugs that come in into the Arabian Sea, and then it gets transported. How do we tackle it? So this is one issue that we didn't have the navies to handle it. So most of the navies are there in East Africa, and we have to come to some agreement as far as the sea is concerned.
What is the potential for a common currency for the South Asian, East South Asian region, as well as for crypto?
Crypto hasn't been that much, it hasn't got a favorable reception so far in the areas, partly also because of revenue considerations. I think we'd like to have the currency within our borders so that we could collect the money. It'll all depend on what ASEAN, China and others do. And without that, I can't see any movement in our areas. But for us, revenue is a big issue for India, for Sri Lanka, for Pakistan, for Bangladesh. Revenue is a big issue. So we'd like to have the currency being controlled by us within our borders.
I noticed SARC has not been mentioned today. I think that's quite indicative of the fate of SARC. So, I know we're running out of time, but just one very quick, maybe just a comment or a question. Climate change is another issue that these countries will have to.
No, it's a big one, and that I forgot about. The Himalayas became very important because most of our rivers come from there. Take Indus on one side, Ganges and the Brahmaputra, then Salween on this side, and finally Irrawaddy, one of the tributaries come from there. So that is affecting us. It's also affecting Nepal and the climate. The whole economy can get changed. The same with Bhutan. And when the water level rises, that will create problems on the Indian and your sides. Also, the fact is, as far as ASEAN is concerned, remember that Mekong also comes from there. So in both ways, both ASEAN and South Asia are getting affected by the Himalayas. Then China has these plans of building the dams there, which is being resisted by the other countries. And that's one issue on which I think ASEAN, BIMSTEC, SAARC, I don't know, Pakistan will have to come into that. And China must call for a meeting, I think separately. We must have a meeting on Himalayas, which even affects Maldives when the water level goes. Little bit is enough to affect. And mine is that there should be the ASEAN countries, the South Asians, and China has to sit down together and talk that over. We may have to have a separate organization on or a committee, standing committee on the Himalayas. It's too important.
What is the latest on the Pakistan-India river dispute?
It's still being held in abeyance.
So that was the only successful deal on the river.
Yes, from 1960.
All the rivers have become a problem. Even Bangladesh, it's a big.
That is one of the reasons that Bangladesh and India cannot cooperate.
And it's regional politics as well as state level politics.
So you don't cooperate and the water goes to the sea.
On that ominous note. Thank you, Mr. Wickremesinghe.